Welcome back, everyone. Frank DeMore here at the End Times Research Ministry, connecting the dots between Bible prophecy and current events for September the 16th, 2013. Let me get right into what's going on in the Middle East. I'll cover this briefly and go on with some other news, but for those who do not know anything about prophecy, or those that are new to prophecy, I'm focusing right now on the Psalm 83 war and the association of the nations in this war, of which I'm going to be centering on Syria, because Syria is in the news, and I'm also going to be centering on what we see from the Palestinians. You see the Gaza Strip. These are the Phoenicians, the modern-day Palestinians. And I'll be connecting the dots there as well. Now, before I go any further, just so that you know, these are all the nations that will be attacking Israel in this Psalm 83 war. They're going down with the purpose in verse 4 to wipe out Israel. And in verse 5, you see that these are Confederate armies coming against Israel. Very simple. Now, I'm going to connect the dots here. This is a recent picture of what's going on in Damascus. It looks like it's almost in a ruinous heap right now, as the Lord told us. But the Lord did tell us, you see the nation of Syria, that Damascus was going to be what? According to the prophecy in Isaiah 17:1, the burden of Damascus, behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be in a ruinous heap. Now, Damascus is the oldest living city. It's never been completely destroyed, ever. So we know that this prophecy is still in the future, and by all accounts of the news, we know that it's coming up very, very quickly. Now, along with that, we also know that Zechariah 12:3 tells us about the burdensome stone, and you see that the tug of war being played between the PLO and the Jews of ownership of this area, the Dome of the Rock. Actually, the Jews had taken over this area in 1967 after they won the war against the Arabs. They took over the area, but they were allowing the PLO, or the Palestinians, if you will, to maintain this Dome of the Rock area. This is the third most holiest site for the Muslims. There's a lot of contention here, and Jerusalem has become a tug-of-war of ownership. And of course, Jesus, we know Jesus was God who came to earth. We know that from John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So he was here, and in the Old Testament, Jesus is looked at as Jehovah God, but in the New Testament, we know him as Jesus Christ, God. Emmanuel, God with us. That's what the Bible tells us. So, what do we know from our Lord? He says that in that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all, look at this, for all people, and all that burden themselves with it shall be cut into pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. So, we're coming to a time where Israel will have no friends, and she will be on her own. This becomes very important because we're witnessing this now, the progression of Israel losing their friends, going down very, very quickly. Now, let me just bring in the news to connect the dots between what the Lord had shown us and what is happening in the news. So for that, let's go over to the first article. Now, this is comes with the video, Israel, the prime target if Syria attacked, Alan Rowland. Now, in many of my videos and many of my website writings, either on BibleProphecyMan.com or here at the End Times Research Ministry, I've been warning about Syria, what is going to happen to Syria, and its connection with Israel, because everything is pointing to Israel. I know we're seeing problems, the chaos in Syria, but Syria is not the end result. It's Israel, because the nations that are listed in the Psalm 83 war, they want one thing, all of them. They have a goal, that's to rid the Middle East of Israel, to get rid of Israel. And this is the exact same thing that we see written in Psalm 83. The Confederate Arab League coming together trying to wipe out the nation of Israel. So I've been talking about these chemical weapons. I warned about it last year. The chemical weapons now this year have been used. And now that there's rumors of war, and we know at the bottom line here is Israel's going to have to do something. If the United States sits back and allows Russia to do what they're doing and making their alliances obviously with their friend Syria, which they've been friends for a long time. Many of you may not know this, but Russia has military bases in Syria, a naval port in Syria. And Russia will be playing a major role in the Ezekiel chapter 38 war. But with all the warnings that have been given to you, let me just play this video so that you'll understand what I'm telling you is being heard by other sources as well.
For this into context, let's go to Danville and talk to Alan Rowland, online columnist. Welcome to the program. So, Mr. Rowland, with Syria warning that Israel will be among its prime targets in case of the U.S. war, how do you think it will respond, and how strong will that be?
Now, before he even gets in there, just for the people who just found my website, this is exactly what I've been saying, that Israel is going to be the target. Bashar al-Assad, and I've shown you this many times, Bashar al-Assad said that if he was attacked by outside forces, he was going to go after Israel, his number one target. And keeping in mind that the rebels who were fighting against Bashar al-Assad, they are Islamics. They are Al-Qaeda. They are the enemy of the United States, of which Barack Obama is supporting, which I'll make the connection as we go through this video.
Well, this is not a big surprise. Saudi Arabia is our surrogate arm for the West.
All right, let me stop it right there because he's talking about Saudi Arabia being the surrogate arm for the West. And that's a fact. What he is saying there is the truth, and I can tell you this right now that it is truth, because what do we see in the Bible? In Ezekiel chapter 38, you're going to find out that Sheba and Dedan, which is Saudi Arabia, is in the area along with the young lions, of which one of them is the United States. So we see the connection there. And all they do is give a formal protest to the Russians who are coming down against Israel as the world watches, thinking that the Islamic forces that are led by Russia are going to wipe out Israel. And of course, Israel is going to win that war because God is going to intervene in that war. But listen to what he says.
Been pro-war for some time now. Prince Bandar is well known for basically pushing the pro-war tendencies of the administration, particularly John Bomb McCain and Graham. So this is still at the bluster stage. People are marking their position, Syria is marking its position, the United States is marking its position with its surrogate, Saudi Arabia, through Prince Bandar. It's all par for the course. It's still bluster until we get the UN report coming on Monday. And then we'll be in a much better situation. But right now, it's all bluster until we get the UN report coming on Monday. And then we'll be in a much better situation. But right now, it's all bluster and posturing that's happening over there in Syria.
I asked the fact that Israel might be among the prime targets of Syria in case Israel might be among the prime targets of Syria in case of the US war. But how is Syria going to respond to that in case it happens?
Of course Israel will be one of the prime targets. What other choice does Syria have but to basically
that in case it happens?
Of course Israel will be one of the prime targets. What other choice does Syria have but to basically, since obviously the 600-pound elephant in the room is Israel, so of course they're going to say that. Because they know Israel's indirectly, if not directly, involved in this whole matter. So it's Israel, Saudi Arabia, the West pushing for regime change in Syria, with ultimately regime change in Iran. This is still posturing, people are marking their positions, and however the American people have already spoken, they don't want war there. And the House has voted down Obama's resolution decisively 10-1. It's not going to get any further than it is right now. However, we're seeing a lot of posturing, and right now it's just posturing.
Besides fostering, if Israel and Syria physically get engaged together, how would you think the US would intervene? And for that matter, how would Russia and Syria's friends engage in all this?
The potential of a classic World War III here. If Syria attacks Israel, obviously we'd have to back up Israel, and of course Russia would back up Syria. So we have all the makings of a major World War III. But let's not over-exaggerate the situation right now. It's posturing, and people throwing threats and words. Particularly when you have John McCain involved, you know it's posturing. He has virtually no credibility. So, right now, that's what I take it for. So why, basically, of course, the main target is not Syria, it's Iran. And everyone knows this.
Indeed. We'll leave it at the time.
All right, so there's a lot to consider here. But Israel is definitely in the mix, and especially when we know for certainty that we're, according to the Bible prophecy, where Israel is going to be standing. Israel is going to be facing these enemies alone. We know that from Zechariah 12:3. Israel is going to probably take out Damascus, as it says in Isaiah 17:1. Now, in Isaiah 17:1, it doesn't say Israel, but we know from the circumstances, more than likely, more than likely, Israel will be the one that takes them out. And we know that Syria is going to be involved in this war. No doubt, there is no question. God revealed it to us in Psalm 83. So let's continue on with the next article. This is Obama pushes the Syrian chemical diplomacy for a nuclear Iran, overriding Israel's concerns. Now, one of the things that I've been warning about Barack Hussein Obama is that he'll be talking out of his left side of his mouth, looking like we're really friends with Israel, but his actions, which come out of the right side of his mouth, show the exact opposite. And Israel has been catching on to this stance by the president ever since Barack Hussein Obama was elected almost 5 years ago. And they are very leery of him, and it just goes hand in hand with what Zechariah told us, that his friends, Israel's friends, are going to abandon him, and we're seeing the actions of abandonment. Now, this article talks a little bit about the concerns of Israel, so let's take a look at it. It says the U.S. President Barack Obama did not wait for the Lavrov agreement. This is the Russians that are taking part in trying to figure out what to do with the chemical weapons, of Saturday, September 14th, and the eradication of Syria's chemical weapons to demonstrate its feasibility. Now, the next day, he jumped in to tell Tehran that there's the potential for diplomatic solutions to arms standoffs in an interview on ABC TV. Now, what's interesting about this is for the past 5 years, when Barack Obama has been continually telling the world that he's trying to work out diplomatic solutions, he's putting pressures on Iran, and that there might be an attack. And I've been saying for the last 5 years that they're not going to do anything. And obviously, if they don't go into Syria to take care of that problem, it looks very doubtful that they'll move into the other area, and Israel knows this, and this is the concern for Israel. It says the Iranians understood that their pursuit of a nuclear weapon is far larger issue to us for the use of chemical weapons in Syria. He said, my suspicion is that the Iranians recognize that they shouldn't draw a lesson that we haven't struck Syria to think that we wouldn't strike them. So you talk about posturing. All the president has been doing is sending words, threats. But, let's go on. But that's exactly what they have understood from the way he backed out of the U.S. military strike in Syria, and so Moscow and Damascus. Now, there is no coincidence that Moscow and Damascus are military allies. is because we see the arrangement in prophecy, the future prophecies. That's where they are. Now, Obama also realized that he was exchanged letters with the new Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, but did not reveal the content. And he added that Rouhani understands the potential for the diplomatic solution in his country's disputed nuclear program, but will not suddenly make it easy. So again, continuation of the rhetoric of Barack Obama. Now, Israel is well aware that Iran is trying to get a bomb to use it on Israel. Iran is involved with Russia in the Ezekiel chapter 38 war. And there is no doubt that in the future they're going to try to use a bomb like this to wipe out Israel, but God is going to stop them during the Ezekiel war. It'll never happen. Ezekiel shows us that Israel is not going to be destroyed, completely destroyed, as these Iranian forces and the Russians and Islamic forces want. Now, I know that if you're in one of the Islamic nations, you're going to have an offense to this. But I didn't write it. I'm telling you what God had showed us, so that when you see this, you'll start to understand who Jesus Christ really is. And he is the God of this world. He's the God of the universe, the God of everything. He created everything, as it says in Colossians. And so it's important to understand why these things are going on in the Middle East, but it's even more important to understand who has given us this knowledge. It's God, and if he's given us this knowledge in these warning, and he's telling him or telling us to come to him for safety, you would have to be out of your mind not to go to Christ for salvation. So let's move on to the next article. Now, as I said, Barack Obama has been supporting the rebels. And a lot of people have gotten wind this past 3 weeks exactly who these rebels are. There was an article that came out. Syria, nearly half of the rebel fighters are jihadists or hardline Islamics, says the IHS Jane report. Nearly half of the rebel fighters in Syria are now aligned with the jihadist and hardline Islamic group, according to the new analyst. Obviously in this civil war. So it says opposition forces battling Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria now number around 100,000 fighters, but after more than 2 years of fighting, they are fragmented to many as 1,000 bands. Now, the new study by IHS Jane's Defense Consultancy estimates that there are around 10,000 jihadists who would include foreign fighters, fighters from powerful factions linked to Al-Qaeda. Now, anybody that's been following Afghanistan and Iraq knows who is America fighting. Who are the enemies killing American soldiers? It's Al-Qaeda. So you have a president who is supporting the troops, these rebels, who are Al-Qaeda linked. And I know that this doesn't make much sense to many of you who are not following this, but you have the President of the United States helping the enemy of Israel. Another 30,000 to 35,000 are hardline Islamists who share much of the outlooks of the jihadists, but it is focused purely on the Syrian war rather than the wider international struggle. There are also at least 30,000 moderates belonging to groups that have an Islamic character, meaning only a small minority of the rebels are linked to secular or purely national groups. So bottom line is, most of the people fighting are these kind of rebels, Al-Qaeda rebels, who, by the way, they have really, when you see what's going on over there, they have no heart. If you think I'm kidding, let's take a look at the next article. Now, this is an article that was just released. It was a couple days ago, as you can see here. It says, beheaded in front of children, Assad's thugs are dragged to their doom and butchered like animals in some of the most brutal scenes to emerge from the Syrian civil war. Now, the people who Barack Obama are supporting. That's one of them right there. This is one of the Al-Qaeda linked factions that are captured one of the troops from Bashar al-Assad's troops. I'm not going to show you the actual beheading, and I think the news agency blocked them out, but just so that you understand what's going on, you'll see it blocked out. This is what's going on with the Al-Qaeda. When they capture people, there's no prisoners, they kill them. This is Barack Obama's, that's who we're supporting. And keep in mind that when these people who are being killed by the rebels fighting against Bashar al-Assad, that they don't have a chance if they get caught, because this is what they're doing with just about every one of the people that they're catching. Now, the ones that they don't catch, the ones that they catch, what in other places, in other cities, some of these other factions that you see that there were so many factions that they were talking about, maybe 100 different factions or more, that they round them up and they give them an ultimatum. Either you follow strict Islam law, Sharia law, or we'll kill you. And as I showed you a couple days ago, they just put them down. They, after beating them, and then they shoot them in the head. This is what the United States, and this is the kind of people that the United States are supporting in that area. Now, just so that you know, if Assad's forces fail and these people take over, the first thing that the rebel leader said was they were going after Israel. And also keep in mind that the same things that we see happening here that are backed up by Barack Obama, the people, the Al-Qaeda, when they go into Syria, anybody that disagrees with them, they will be killed just like these people. If this is what you want, if this is what you think America should be supporting, God help you. Now, in closing this particular section on this, just let me say this, that Bashar al-Assad isn't much better. But the fact of the matter is, he is more moderate, and he is allowing his people in Syria to have or worship as they will in their own faith. And this is one of the good things about Bashar al-Assad. But it's not this way with the rebels. It's either you go and become as strict Islamic, or you'll see the results as you see in this article. Now, the next prophecy that I want to deal with just a little bit, because it goes hand in hand of what's going on with the problem in Syria and the problem in Egypt and what's going on in the Middle East. Because the Lord told us about the time that this destruction was going to come. All right? And I know that those who have been with me, that you know all about this, but for the sake of the new people, look at what Christ taught Paul the Apostle, because this is what Paul wrote to us. And this is in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3. This is the beginning of verse 3 right here. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. So at a time that we're hearing the call for peace and safety, this is when the destruction will come. Not peace, destruction. So here's an update on what's going on, because the Palestinians are the ones that are engaged with Israel trying to come up with some peace agreement. I've been telling you for years, don't expect any peace agreement, because that's not what the prophecy talks about. Now here we have Abbas. This is a picture of Abbas. Meet our conditions, then we can have peace. Now obviously the Israelis are not going to meet those conditions. There will be no peace. Israel's peace partner, Palestinian Authority Chairman Abbas, has once again outright rejected the Israeli demand to ensure a peace agreement that does not harm its security. In a speech on Sunday to the graduates of the University of Jericho, Abbas also clarified that unless all of the PA demands are met, there will not be a peace agreement with Israel. I don't know how many times I would have to continue to say this before you believe what the Lord showed us here. because there are still a lot of people out there who have been watching my post that think that peace is coming. And this is the exact opposite of what the word of the Lord shows us. The sudden destruction. That's what he is telling us. Now, nobody likes war. I don't like war. But there's no way I can change the word of the Lord. This is what he said was going to happen. It always happens. His prophecies, 100%, all of them have coming to pass. So this is what you have to be looking for. Now, as far as the peace agreement, Kerry putting Israel in impossible situation, the Israeli lawmaker writes. So let's go over there. It says this, and this is actually today's news, September the 16th. Right wing MKs begin pressuring Netanyahu against giving up land to the Palestinians. Now the Ludwig, this is one of the parties you see, like in the United States, you have the Republicans, the Democrat, with the Ludwig is the one of the parties in Israel. But let's read it down here. It says, Knesset members on the right began pressuring Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday to minimize the number of concessions he authorizes in diplomatic negotiations with the PLO. Now, the MKs said that they were concerned that the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry would pressure Netanyahu to make more concessions, then therefore found it necessary to counteract Kerry's demands with pressure of their own. To that end, 16 MKs in the coalition wrote to Prime Minister as he was meeting with Kerry. Now tell the Secretary of State that Israel has no intention of returning to the parameters of the Oslo Accords or relinquishing any more of Israel's homeland to the Palestinian Authority, they wrote. Now the Oslo Accords, they were at a time in 1993 when the peace process was going on and the Palestinians were, demanding land back there. And I believe it was at that time the Israelis were going to give up a lot to get some kind of peace agreement, and then that fell through. So it says among the MKs were legislators from the Ludwig Baitenu and the Bayat Yahidi. I'm not even sure if I pronounced that right. Excuse me if I didn't. Including Deputy Ministers Vidi Lincoln, the Foreign Ministry, and Terpes, of course, the transportation, all these different, what they call the MKs. Now it says Deputy Defense Minister Danny Deacon complained that the Palestinians had upped their demands in the negotiations by asking for concessions made by former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. And in September 2008, Olmert offered the Palestinians 100% of the West Bank with land swaps. Now, this is what these MKs saying they don't give any more concessions to. Now, knowing that Israel is not going to give land away, and one of the concessions that they want, that you should understand, which is the primary focus of the problem, is the ownership of East Jerusalem. This, remember the last article that I showed you, Amman Abbas said if you don't give all of our demands, well, one of those demands is the ownership of East Jerusalem, where the Temple Mount is. East Jerusalem. So obviously this is the most holy site for the Jews, and they're not going to give it away. So if they don't meet the demands, and obviously they're not going to meet those demands, what does that leave us? Well, definitely it leaves us where I've been telling you, according to the scripture. If you don't give them complete demand of what they want, the end result? What do you think is going to happen? Sudden destruction. What kind of destruction do you think it's going to be? I'll show you. Right here. Psalm 83. Palestinians. You don't meet my demands? Well, hey, we're going to attack you. Syria. Bashar al-Assad. So all I know is this. There's an event that's coming that it's going to force force people against Israel. And when that happens, you're going to see some major prophecies being fulfilled, showing us that we're very, very close to the second return of the Lord Jesus Christ. So let me get down to this other article where MK's urged PM to tell Kerry that Oslo is dead. There's some other information I put there for you. And let me go to another prophecy right now. In the last days, we are told two things about this last generation who would see the return of the Lord Jesus Christ. One of the things in Daniel chapter 12, verse 4, was increase of knowledge. All right, so increase of knowledge. And the other thing was that people would be traveling back and forth. And this prophecy was only fulfilled in our generation. There was no other generation ever at any other time that would be able to fulfill this generation. Very, very specific information. All right, then, you're probably wondering what this is. So let's scroll down and take a look at what this is. This is something that went on display. New gadget, as you see here, that Adali Defense had come up with. It says, much like a portable electrical magnetic pulse ray gun, can disable a vehicle's electronic circuitry, rendering it useless in battlefield or pursuit conditions. And you've probably seen a lot of these science fiction movies like Minority Report or some of these other ones where they disabled cars or vehicles with this kind of technology, but it's no longer science fiction. It's become reality. And so this is just one example. And if you want a lot of examples, and one of my favorite chapters in my book, The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth, is the chapter on increased knowledge. And if you wanted to read that information, all you had to do go to my link. You'd be able to click the link right here, September 14th, and download the book and read all of the technology. It'll blow you away what this nation, not only the United States, but what the world has come up with in the last days. So thanks again for allowing me to come into your home and to connect the dots, Bible prophecy and current events. And if you've been watching this video, stay tuned. Come back to my site today, September the 16th. There'll be some other news that I don't have in my video. God bless.